Hey Tim, how you doing?
I'm doing, well, mostly I'm doing okay.
Mostly. So what's behind that?
Well, the reason I'm glad to be able to talk with you this evening is that I've got this school board who are, I'll use the word again, mostly okay, but there's a board chairman who's just driving me crazy.
So you want to spend the session today focused on that problem?
Yeah, I think I could use your advice about that.
Mm-hmm. So talk to me about what's the issue that you're struggling with?
Well, I respect, the relationship is odd. We kind of like each other. She was the person who was very supportive of my candidacy for the position 3 years ago. And but now it's gotten to the point where she's really encouraging me, making me feel like I've got to do things that I don't agree with, and B, I don't think the rest of the Board of Education is necessarily on board with. So I was wondering what you think about that.
So you tell me, what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, can I give you an example of what's happened? So we have a high school principal here who is, I think by all accounts, one of the best in the state. I worked hard to get him here, and kids like him, parents like him. I think a lot of the board likes him. But she doesn't like him, and she's got this bee in her bonnet that he, he's just not good, and she's taken this personal dislike for him, and she wants me to tell him that he really isn't going to get tenure. This is his third year as principal, and I don't know what to do about that.
Mm-hmm. So you said this is an example, so I assume that this is just illustrative to the way she's interacting with you. And if that's the case, what from that case can we better understand about what's happening that's the root problem here?
You mean in everything that goes on between the two of us?
Well, I assume so. You started in talking more generally about the relationship, and you only raised this issue about the principal as an example. So I'm just checking: is it that issue with the principal that she's pushing on, or is there more to the problem?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good question. That issue is, to use your word, illustrative of the relationship. It's like she's sneaking around back and asking me to do things that I don't know has the support of the remainder of the board, and I'm kind of loyal to her because we've had this close relationship over a couple of years. I think most of the board would be really upset if they knew this was happening. Last year, without the knowledge of the board, she came in the night before the budget was to be brought to the town and said, well, we have to add these two things and remove these two things. I don't think the board really knows about that. Mm-hmm. So, I feel caught in a kind of ethical bind here.
So what do you want to come out of this? What's the good outcome of this challenge you find yourself in?
Well, that's what I was hoping you would help me with, Richard. I'm just not quite sure what to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, so let's start with where you want to be. So think a little bit with me about what could a solution look like, or what would it look like to have a solution? What would be different for you in your relationship with her?
If I could feel more honest with her about what the relationship, she as school board chairman and I as superintendent ought to be. I wish I could, I don't know, I feel uncomfortable saying to her look, you can't do these things, and here's why you can't do these things, and here's the impact it's having on me, and here's, I think, the impact it's having on overall the school board and the school district.
So just so I make sure I understand,
Sure.
you're uncomfortable being that direct and honest with her
Yeah.
because of your relationship and your history.
Yeah.
But that's also what you want. That's what the opposite of those things would in fact be the good outcome for you.
Yeah.
You want that kind
Yeah.
of honesty.
Right.
You want to be able to be direct, and you want it within those bounds of a typical superintendent board chair.
Right. I mean, I feel like I'm in an abusive relationship.
Wow. So what does that mean?
It means that everything has gotten to the point where I feel like I need her, and I need her support, I need her approval, and that she senses it, and she's asking for more. It's like she's tightening the control that she has over me more and more, and I just don't know how to get out of it.
So I'm sure obviously this is weighing on you,
Yeah.
and I'm assuming you've thought quite a bit about this. So what have you imagined as possible strategies for going at this problem?
Well, the one I really like, the scenario I really like is I tell her to, shove off, and that if she doesn't like it, I'm going to just go someplace else.
So tell me about that strategy.
Well, I like the feeling that it would leave me. I think I'd feel really good after that. But knowing me, I'd think, well, where is that someplace else? Well, I think I have some pretty good options. But I think it would hurt her. I think that she genuinely believes that she's doing the right thing by kids in the school district and the school board, that she's doing her job well. And this is going to seem weird, but I like her, and I respect who she is. I respect in some ways how she thinks. She has her own business, and she does very well at it. And I worry about hurting her feelings, and I also worry about her totally rejecting me and saying, yeah, that's a good idea, you ought to go someplace else. That would be hard for me.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any evidence as to how she's thinking about this situation?
No, but I met with her at her place of business a couple of weeks ago. We had to go over the agenda for a board, and I was coming back from a meeting in Hartford, and I stopped by to make sure things were all right for the agenda. And then I noticed, as I was entering her office, that she was treating other people just as she might treat me. So I'm worried that she doesn't even see how she's coming off, either to me or to those other people, which helped me not take it as personally as I'd been taking it.
So can we go back to the problem that you're trying to solve here? Talk to me again about what's the root problem here?
Again, I was hoping you would help me with that, but you're not going to let me do that, are you? Okay, so as I really think about it, I'm afraid that she'll abandon me as someone that she supported, and she does support me to the community. That she won't like me, and God knows what else is going to happen. And I'm just worried about that.
Mm-hmm. So, have you ever faced similar situations in past history, other facets of your life that are like this?
Well, yeah. Once, when I was a relatively new principal, I was really unsure about how I was doing. It was sort of the same thing, because the kids in the high school liked me, the parents liked me, the teachers were seeing me as someone who was helping pull together the school and dealing with some of the difficult cultural problems and morale problems that were extant. And I call a superintendent, and I'll never forget, I was working in my office, it was New Year's Eve, and I said, I need to meet with you. And, she said, well, I can't. I've got people coming over, so I said, no, I got to meet with you. And so we met for lunch, and I said, I surprised myself. I said, look, you can have my resignation right now, because I don't think I'm doing a good job, and I don't think you think I'm doing a good job, and I'm just tired of being on tenterhooks all the time. And she was absolutely surprised by what I said, and then she said, well, I was hoping you would retire from here. I don't understand what you're talking about. And then we had this conversation that seemed to set things straight. So for the rest of the time I was in that school district, things were pretty good.
So let's talk about that as since it's a somewhat similar situation, not perfectly similar. Is there anything we can take away from that case study in your past that might inform how you might want to approach this new experience that you're facing?
Well, I was doing something because I was at the end of my tether with this person, and it got me I was so worried about it that I decided it just wasn't worth it for me to continue as I was going. And I meant it. I would have left. At the conclusion of the year, I would have gotten a job someplace else, which would have been easy. But I didn't want to leave. And it clarified everything in the relationship that we were in. So I get where you're moving this conversation. And I got a knot in my stomach thinking about having a similar conversation with the school board chairman, but it isn't any good the way it is now. She might think it's okay for her, but it's no good for me. I just can't sleep. I just can't live with this anymore. So maybe there ought to be that kind of, I ought to talk with her about that. I just ought to say exactly what I'm thinking. I don't know. It feels like bigger stakes now. We live in the community. My kids are going to school in town over. We like it. We like where we are. Mm-hmm. It's that other conversation. Kids weren't in school. Not so much was riding on whether I was successful when I continued to have a job. It just feels bigger now.
Well, probably is bigger.
Yeah.
So let's talk through this.
Okay.
What's your hunch right now? Do you think that going down the path of trying to have the clarifying conversation makes sense?
I don't know that there's a viable option. I've thought of making an issue with the remainder of the school board. I've thought of asking them to, we ought to be in executive session. Are you aware of the things that are going on? And here's how I'm feeling about things. I think that would be a betrayal, although in my, blacker moments, I thought that would be a great way to get revenge. But I don't think she understands what she's doing. I don't know that there's anything else to do but to talk with her and say, from my point of view, this is how things are going, and I'm very, very unhappy.
So how do you want to approach this? Let's talk tactic and strategy here. How do you want to approach her in this conversation?
Well, imagine I would just say, I think, we need to talk. I need to have a conversation where you listen to me and you really try to understand what I'm telling you. And then I think she would do that because we've had to talk about other things, but I think she would be shocked about this because if I have the conversation, I mean, really what I do mean to say is that, I'm unhappy enough to leave. And if I say that and things don't get better, I'm going to leave. I don't know what else to do. I don't want to hurt her. I like her. I mean, not every minute, but overall, I like her.
So it sounds as if you want to announce somewhat that you want to have this conversation.
Yeah.
You want to make sure. Any other thinking about how you want to approach it once you're in the meeting and you're sitting down across from one another?
Well, once I call for the conversation, the die is cast, I'll need to really. I don't know what else to do except say, look, you have to listen to me. This is something very important. You have to promise me not to interrupt because I need to get it all off my plate, and it might bother you, and you might want to respond to me. I mean, I've got a knot in my stomach just thinking about this, and also I'm feeling a little better just thinking about it. You got to promise me, or just let me say what I need to say, and then we can talk about it. And I guess those are the rules. I'd encourage her not to be defensive, but I don't think that's a good idea. I think she'd probably listen to me.
So let's play back. Yeah. Let's play past the knot. Let's imagine forward, and you had her in the conversation. She agreed to it, and you get it all out there. What might happen, given your knowledge of her, given being in past situations? I guess the reason I'm asking is I want you to be kind of rehearsing it a little bit in your head so none of this blindsides you.
Well, two things could happen. One is that she could, I don't know. I think, this is a woman who told me a couple of years ago that when she was a 15-year-old, I mean, I'll never forget it. She said, well, both my parents were killed in a car accident. And she said, I was an orphan. And she's capable of that kind of intimacy. And I think she likes me, but I think because of how I've let things go, I'm not sure if she respects me anymore. And I think she'd be okay. I think she'd be okay with it. I think she would also really want it, I think. Yeah. So I think it would be all right.
What will you be looking for in the meeting and even in the days after the meeting to have a sense that you're moving down the path that you want, as from the beginning of our conversation, get to a place where you have a relationship that's more bounded by a typical board superintendent relationship, one where you feel as if you can be honest? What's going to tell you you're moving in that direction?
That, if nothing else, she's going to say to me, I never meant to cross the boundary line. I never meant to bring up things with you that really should be discussed by the Board of Education. And I want an agreement from her that when and if she does it, she's going to listen objectively when I say, look, I think you're at that point again. I think your interest in say, getting rid of the high school principal is divergent from that of many of the members of the board. I think it's a discussion that's more a personnel issue, and I think the board needs to know that you have this agenda if that's what you think is so important. And I think you also have to have faith in me that I'm supervising this principal, and that's my job. Your job is to deal with me, but not to try to go around me to him.
So that sounds a bit like a new norm that would define your relationship.
Yes.
So is that something that is going to happen naturally? Is that something you want to make that a proposed norm? How do you want to approach that?
I think I need to say it to her. I'm not inclined to do those things. I usually trust people to come to an understanding without it being so explicit, but in this case, I think I'm going to have to be explicit. She's smart. She's very, very smart. So I think she'll get that.
So given all that you know about this person and given your own past experiences, is there anything else you want to have happen in that meeting that's going to lead you down the more positive outcome you're wanting?
Yeah, I'm going to want her to tell me, I'm going to want her to give me her own assessment about how she feels I'm doing. You know, the principle aside, I really want to understand what she thinks of the work I'm doing, because I don't have a sense for that right now. And I'm going to want her to, I guess more than anything, I'm going to want her to tell me that she thinks that this is a smart approach to things, and that if she doesn't like it at some point in the very, very immediate future, she'll come and talk with me more about how she perceives our conversation. But I it's just not worth it if I'm not being straight with her and she's not being straight with me.
So let's kind of step back from this a little bit. What are you taking away from this conversation, and how are you going to use it in this exchange that you're about to have?
Well, what I'm taking away is that, it just gets to who I am as a human being and some of the insecurities that I have and that I've got to deal with. I mean, I think the problem really lies with me rather than with her. And that in this, and probably in some other circumstances, I've got to be more trusting in myself to get things out on the table and not feel as though the world is going to come to an end if I talk about the things that I think are important and things that I believe in.
Great.
All right.
Nice chatting with you.
Do I owe you a lot of money for this? This was very good.
You could sit up off the couch now.